Butler Jazz.
You know, I'll just jump in and, you know, I've listened to your music so much. You know, when I started with jazz, conversing with the elders, and those records were the first records I got, actually, some of the first stuff. And but
Oh, wow.
you know, the last record I heard from you was Live from Newport Jazz, and I wanted to ask you to start with what's happening in this department of band leading, and with you, what are you preparing nowadays? I mean, what's on the schedule?
Well, I'm still maintaining my organ group, and I also have a gypsy group as well. We're still dealing with parts of the what we call the Django Unchained project, which basically was taking gypsy music and putting it into an urban context, which is what a scant version of the Newport Festival, you know, turned out being. I wanted to do it a bit better. I tried doing it in the studio, and it seems like the studio couldn't contain, you know, what was going on with that music. It kept, you know, manifolding different nuances and whatnot, and the studio couldn't capture it well. And I was in a different space of mind as well at Newport, because that was the autumn, basically, or summer of 2018, and we were about to lose Hamiet Bluiett within the next couple of months when we recorded that. And it was, and I mentioned from the stage, it was dedicated to him, you know, at that particular time. It was a hard pill to swallow as far as losing him. He dug the project when I was telling him about it, and certain things I played for him. Lately, as of within the past month, I did a hit at Birdland, and we basically premiered the what I call Looking at Locke, the music of Eddie Lockjaw Davis.
Oh, wow, really? Oh, that's amazing.
And yes, and was received very well. I also, in addition to bringing his music back to the fore, I also brought some very vital information about him and his family, you know, and his music and whatnot that isn't in Wikipedia, that, you know, isn't at the Jazz Museum in Harlem in so many, you know, words. The Jazz Museum in Harlem basically went to visit Jaw's family out in Vegas, and it was Lauren Schoenberg in particular that went there and picked up personal effects, including his horn, various arrangements that he had, sheet music wise, scrapbooks that his mother was keeping, you know, for him, you know, of his musical escapades and things of that sort, and personal stuff as well too. And to be able to not only bring back Jaws, you know, in that sense, and to give him a second look was great, and continues to be great. You know, last year was his centennial. And on the centennial, I went to Vegas and stayed there for 3 days, went to his gravesite, his house, played in his practice room, had a chance to, you know, check out the whole entire house, meet his daughter, who will be 80 years old this July. And his granddaughter by the name of Danielle Dozier, that's the main person I've been in touch with. And she has a sister named Yolanda, who does Katy Perry's wardrobe and stuff like that out in Vegas. So she's quite busy.
Oh, yeah, I imagine.
And probably quite lucrative as well, too. But before this visit, to find out that Lockjaw actually had brothers, and there were various attempts at him having children prior to Sheila's arrival, and to find out that there were miscarriages and stillbirths and things of that sort. Oh man, it was deep. And he had a twin brother by the name of Freddie.
I didn't know. Wow.
And who didn't get involved in music, but he was a staff sergeant during World War II. And he also had a couple other brothers by the name of Carl Davis. He went by the professional name of Reverend Carl Davis, Chicago Carl Davis, King Carl Davis. He was a singer comedian in the Open the Door Richard sort of frame, in that sort of mold. And he had a whole lot of hokum in his act and whatnot. Like he had tunes called like If the Motive Is Right, I Could Eat You with a Spoon, stuff like that. That's comical, no serious dialogue. I guess he could have called it serious, depending upon what his intent was. But also on some of those recordings, Jaws was on there, and nobody ever made the correlation that they were brothers. Oh. And this was even on the classics from Jaws from 1948 to 52. There's about 4 tracks on there in which Jaws is playing with his brother. Well, and it never gets mentioned that they were related. And I had to put that together for, them. And, anywho, so to give the combination of the behind the scenes, the early bit of Jaws where he actually, his first nickname was Dr. Jazz.
Oh, wow.
Before Lockjaw.
Wow. Okay.
And to that end, playing on the doctor aspect of it, he had tunes that he was playing with his group called the Reboppers that had Fats Navarro as his co-lead on trumpet. He had tunes that had medical terms to them. They had medical titles like surgery, maternity, spinal, things of that nature. And Lockjaw was one of those tunes. And I guess from that particular tune, his name, probably became permanent because it was a hit when it came out, and the name and the tune stuck with him for the rest of his life, I guess. It's a pleasure playing that music, and it was also a challenge as well, because like with most of the individuals that were coming into late 30s, going into the 40s, the main vessels of music for like beboppers and whatnot was blues and also rhythm changes. And a whole lot of his compositions had blues and rhythm change variations to them. So the challenge was to be able to present it in a fresh context. And once again, chose to go the urban route, and not only I'm dealing with the Dr. Jazz repertoire, but also a good cross section of his repertoire during his existence and putting it in different areas. Like there's a tune from the 20s that he and Johnny Griffin did called How Am I to Know?
Really?
And
oh, wow. I have to find it.
It sounds like one of those How Am I to Know? One of the 1920s saying, and they take it and they swing it. I said that was cool, but I played around with the fact of or the possibility of putting a disco thing behind it, and we wound up doing it disco. And it put it in a different, not only a different groove, but it also gave different dialects and different syntax that you could use. It wasn't just regular swing stuff. You could actually go into playing like a freak out or, you know,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, and gave it a different lift, you know, and quite a few other tunes were dealt with that way as well, not disco wise, but just other grooves and whatnot, and it made it fresh and it gave it a bit more expanded breadth, if you will. Wow. So not every tune and tempos and all that mattered, you know. And it became a hit. You know, we had sold out the weekend, and it was great reviews, and folks were already saying that this was the next album in contention, and I'm like, okay, if you insist, you know. So I'm busy cultivating that.
Super.
I'm still dealing with the electric group as well.
Yeah, I love that band.
Bring in the pedals and whatnot. Yeah. So keeping all options open, and collaborations, and also trying to get recoup some of these missing gigs that, you know, got knocked out when the pandemic came through. Yeah. So this will be my first time actually back in Europe since October of 2020.
Wow. When are you coming? In the summer or?
I'll be towards the fall.
Oh, okay. Super. Mm-hmm. We'll try to catch you.
And there's a bit of an Asian tour that's going on as well. A couple spots in Japan, and so stuff is starting to come back into the fore. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Looking forward.
Tomorrow I'm actually going to the studio to do a record with JMI Records, which is a live to tape for vinyl pressing.
Wow. Okay.
And it's solo baritone stuff, so I'll be doodling and noodling and all that, you know. Yeah. And that's all. There's no rhythm section, no, you know. Yeah. David Murray, and they've been doing a series of these solo recordings, and David Murray, I think, was one of the last individuals that did an instrumental with them. So, yeah, that's what's on the docket for right now.
Are you going to improvise or play tunes tomorrow?
Tunes and improv.
Both, yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back into some yesteryear stuff, and also that I never recorded, or, you know, and possibly give a different stab at it. And one in particular is Duke Ellington's Frustration. I heard Carney do that some time ago, and I've noodled around with it, but never played a full version of it. So I'm going to take a listen at that again and give that a holler, and we'll make it do what it needs to do. David Murray's Main that Bluiett also soloed on as well. Some things from Frank Lowe.
Wow, beautiful.
I think improv. I'm going to deal with some extended technique action and whatnot. I'm still going through, once I get off of here, I'm going to deal with some more music. Pull up some sheet music, get some other ideas, and start sketching certain things out, you know, fleshing them out, so that when I get in there, it'll be a bit more concise, you know. But it's only going to be within the realm of 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So as much time as, you know, we can get in there, in and out, and that's it.
Fantastic. Did you ever do solo saxophone gigs before? Like solo?
No, the closest I've come as far as a recording is concerned is on the Caribbean Rhapsody CD. There's a couple of vignettes that play as a fire break between the tunes, between Caribbean Rhapsody and also the Concerto for Saxophones. Yep. And I'm doing that on soprano and tenor. And it's basically elements of the two larger pieces, just to keep it, you know, keep the cohesion happening. So it's not just something that's just right from the left, you know. but a whole sonic, you know, thing. The sonic vacuum just comes to me and then goes back into the chamber orchestra, you know. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's as close as I've come to solo efforts. Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Look
beautiful.
forward to it, actually,
Oh,
because
me too.
I think about the aspect of who actually played solos first, and once again comes back to Coleman Hawkins. You know, Coleman Hawkins did a entire solo piece called Picasso back in 1948, and nothing but tenor. And he just filled that space up. And of course, a little later on, my next, at least in chronological order for me, the next person that comes to mind is Anthony Braxton.
Oh, I love that record.
He did,
that's a beautiful
version. He did a version of Come Sunday. That was in, I think it was recorded the 4th of January in 71. He was in Paris. And that was my first earful of Anthony Braxton. And then later on, I got the 4 alto album where he dedicates pieces to John Cage and whatnot. And you know,
how old were you?
Just to know that your horn could. I was 12, 13.
Oh, wow, man. Oh, okay, that's heavy.
Oh. Because my teacher at the Mr. Donald Washington was an avid public radio devotee, and he turned us on to our Detroit affiliate, WDT. And during that time in the 80s, the programming was off the hook. I mean, all 7 days. It was jazz oriented. It was Afrocentric, to say the least. You had vintage jazz, Jazz Yesterday with Jim Gallard, Sound Projections with Kofi Natambu, which was dealing with the avant-garde, quote unquote avant-garde, with like the AACM bag group, World Sax Quartet, you know, and things of that nature. Found out about Billy Bang and all the cats from there. Hotel Havana was an Afro-Cuban program. Blues After Hours with the famous Coachman. Of course, he dealt with all the, you know, the serious lowdown, you know, guttural blues and all that. There were a couple of R&B shows that were also on as well too. Gone But Not Forgotten, and the R&B show with Fred Zelinka, and that dealt with all the doo-wop, the jump bands, the proto-jump, you know, proto-rock bands and stuff there. The 80s and the early 90s on public radio in our region was banging. Wow. And that's how I got hip to Braxton, WSQ, you know, and all the cats from the AACM. I mean, these became our heroes and stuff, you know. And to finally come here some 6 years later and to be able to play with them, and, you know, it's like they jumped off of the radio airwaves into coalesced into a being and made it happen, you know. I was just telling Cecil McBee, who I hadn't seen in like years. He was the first bassist I played with in Lester's band when I came here in 1988. First time, and that was the first time seeing him. And we just did a great night in Harlem that was found, you know, at the Apollo Theater, and it was sponsored by the Jazz Foundation of America. We do this on a yearly basis, and they did a tribute to the Great Day in Harlem photo, and by all the participants that were in the Great Night in Harlem at the Apollo, all the Apollo participants posed for a photo outside of the stage entrance to basically evoke the spirit of the Great Day in Harlem picture that was taken back in '58. And they made mention that there are only 2 people that are left from that photo. That's Benny Golson, who was there at the Great Night in Harlem photo, and Sonny Rollins. Everybody else is transitioned and whatnot. So Benny's 94 4, I think he said, and Sonny's in that neck of the woods. I talk to Sonny every other day.
Really? Oh,
You know,
wow,
so
that's beautiful.
that's always been a shot.
Wow.
Yeah, to call him up, he always asks about Mom. I didn't know Sonny had siblings.
Wow.
That were, he's the baby or whatever, but he had older siblings. Valdemar was a brother of his that just recently passed, and he was older than Sonny, you know. And I think his sister's named Maggie or Margaret or something to that effect. And so I mean, yeah, these waters are running deep and whatnot.
Yeah.
But to be able to play with Cecil McBee, to come here as a musician, to play with Lester Bowie, who previously was just on records and tapes, and you know, he came to my hometown, Detroit, and whatnot, and recruited me, and he was the catalyst that got me here to New York. Yeah, and I'm always forever indebted to Lester for that. You know,
how did you meet Lester, by the way? I mean, how did that happen? How did he hear you?
Well, what happened was Lester came into Detroit for creative music at the DIA, which is the Detroit Institute of Arts. This was put together by the Creative Arts Collective, and it was under the guise of Spencer Bearfield and various people that were on staff there. So one of the concerts on May the 30th, I think it was the 29th, 30th and the 31st, if I'm correct. And it was Lester Bowie that was there for 2 nights at the recital hall. And I was a last minute addition to come on and play for that concert. Yeah. And I'm still looking at photos from that hit where I'm playing. I'm wearing a red silk suit and red silk suit, and I have a tenor and I think soprano, tenor, and bass saxophone I was playing. I had just acquired my my first bass saxophone that was my own the month beforehand. So we're playing, and Lester gets a break, and he starts introducing the members of the band, and he gets to me last, and he says on tenor and bass saxophone, and he looks and has his pause and says, Santa Claus, and everybody just starts laughing because of the red suit and whatnot. And but he dug the time that we had together, and we exchanged information. And he said, you know, I'm getting ready to put a band together that I really hear you in. And this band turned out to be the forerunner to the New York Organ Ensemble. You know, that eventually would have Amina Claudine Myers, Don Moyer. But the band that I came there with was Donald Smith on piano and vocals, late Donald Smith, late Philip Wilson on drums and percussion. Cecil McBee was on bass, he was the rhythm section, and Lester and I were the horns.
Wow. And
I actually have some cassettes. I made some, you know, those old school cassette players, recorders. I had down by my foot with the little record button and the play button and all that. So I actually have recordings of that I'm eventually going to digitize. And yeah, from the years 80, we played Carlos One, which was a now defunct jazz club that was not too far away from Jimi Hendrix's studio on 6th Avenue.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were there 88 and 1989. And he started adding guitar and trombone. So he had John Paul Borelli, Kelvin Bell, Spencer Bearfield at, you know, various times. Trombone wise, it was the first time I met Steve Turre, who's playing SNL band and whatnot here. Julian Priester, Luis Bonilla, and Frank Lacey were the trombone players at any given time, you know, during the, and Amina Claudine Myers replaced Donald Smith.
Wow.
And Moyer replaced, you know, Philip Wilson.
Yeah. Wow.
It's been a great time. Continues to be.
Yeah, that's crazy. That, I mean, you were what, like 19, and you started to play with those guys, basically,
Yes.
right? Wow, that's
Mhm.
that's amazing. Around that time, I also have the track, those records that you did with Julius Hemphill, and how did you connect with him? Actually, I mean, was it through Lester, or like how did that story begin with him?
Indirectly, actually. Let me get this together here. Julius Hemphill. I actually met WSQ when I was 13.
Wow.
This is once again another one of the creative music at the DIA situations where my teacher, Donald Washington, took me to go see them. And of course, this was the original lineup back then with Julius, David, Oliver, and Hamiet. And I was just in awe, you know, to hear the fullness of these four horns with no rhythm section, no, you know, no chordal help whatsoever. They were the band, and to hear them individually as well.
Yeah.
Because on the second half, they did individual vignettes before coming back together as a collective. And that gig also coincided with the review album that came out on Black Saint. So they played a good portion of those tunes, and that was coming out as well. And we exchanged numbers with Julius then. No, I just talked with him backstage, and just it was a whole young blood, like that, man. We're gonna keep in touch with you, So 6 years later, I hooked up with Bluiett, who came back with the WSQ for the Montreux Detroit Jazz Festival, and I wound up sitting in with him, who was he was sitting in with Teddy Harris's big band, and we had a chance to. That was our first chance to play with each other, and so that following year, after hooking up with Lester, this was, I guess, it was through Philip Wilson, because we played at the VP Fair, which was a St. Louis jazz festival, and the gig had me not only play with Philip Wilson's group, but I also had a secondary job where after the festival was over, they had an afterglow at this place called the Prestige Jazz Club in East St. Louis. And I hosted the jam sessions there. That's where Julius came in. He came in and sat in one of the jam sessions, and we exchanged info. In the following year, I was playing with him in Long Tongues, the saxophone opera.
That's incredible, man.
What was that? Was that 89 too? I think it's 89 as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So the 80s, I mean, was a very, very accelerated time. I mean, I had first started playing saxophone like in 80. So within 5 years stint, I was faculty member up at Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, and I was taking my first tour of Europe.
Wow.
At the age of 16, and later on that year, that was actually the first time in December that I played with Wynton. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's where the photo comes from, probably, right? That you said.
Indirectly, yeah.
Oh, cool.
I'm gonna treasure this mug too, because there are too many photos of us back in the 80s. I got some photos where I was playing, it was Blues Alley. That was the first hit back in mid-December of 85.
Wow.
And this coincided with the time that Branford left to join Sting.
Exactly, yeah.
And at that time, Winton was checking out various cats, you know, like Todd Williams, Walter Blanding. Who else was on that? Don Braden. You know,
Oh, yeah.
he was going through a bunch of cats trying to see who's going to be the fit. So I lasted for a couple of years before Todd Williams became the permanent cat, you know, on the hit or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Well, at what time did you mentioned these like crazy 80s and crazy 90s, and when I look at the records you've done, like really in the 90s, it's like who's who in jazz, basically. You know, I listened to the other day to the Ronald Shannon Jackson record you did that
Wow.
live in Warsaw, and it's just killing, man. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, and I mean everything, all those records, it's just the energy of those groups, you know, of the elders with you younger guys, and it's just so nice to hear that. It's
and to be able to even be on the same stage with like Shannon Jackson and Philip Wilson, that was a kick in, you know, a kick in the tail right there, because they have just so much power, and with that much power, it's like you know, you can't help but ride the wave or get sucked into it, you know, and you got a deal. So that brought me into, ooh, I gotta represent, you know, and not just with sound, but also, you know, with whatever ideas that come along with it as well, too, you know.
Yeah. How were these guys?
It's a blessing and a half.
As band leaders, to you know, towards the young cats, like you know, Julius and Hamiet or Lester or you know, Ronald. How were they as the band leaders?
You know, they talk a lot about how cats were mentoring back in like the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and whatnot. You know, that was still in place. You know, with cats like Lester and Julius, and they always talked about, you know, basically you keeping your identity and doing whatever it is that you needed to do to express yourself, and keep a foot in the past. I mean, as far as knowing what the tradition is and knowing what the lineage is, and add on to that as well, you know, through whatever convictions you have. And if folks don't dig it, man, fuck them, you know.
Yeah, sure.
It's your time. It's what you got to do, and it's your convictions, and you know, and it was about stick-to-itiveness, you know, because also during that time there was, you know, the bit that the media was trying to play up between Winton and Lester and all, and trying to get them to bump heads and all. But you can't do that, man, you know, because Lester always talked about the time that he went in brass fantasy, you know, so, you know, you can't this, that, and other about it. I mean, was the thing, but at the end of the day, about what these cats are putting down and what they're adding to the mix, you know. But there was a on. These cats didn't, you know, check you out on the bandstand and make sure that you were okay with the criteria for their concert or their gig or whatever. They check how your health, how's another, you know, it was all around. And you got to take care of.
Oh shit, James, I think I lost you.
$1 worth of in his mouth at the time that I played with him. I mean, everything basically replaced.
Yeah,
you know, and like, man, I still have my own teeth. You know, I've had to let go of a couple of wisdom, but this is on me.
yeah.
No caps, no runs, no errors. And I can kind of take that as a blessing, because back in the 80s, I was a chocolate nut, and being a chocolate nut coupled with slipshod dental habits could take hold on you. But through it. But much better now though, and passing that on, and whatever we can pass. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going on out here with these foods, or lack thereof, and keeping the youth as well as ourselves, informed, so that we can continue to practice our craft and the right foods and do the right things to help do that. One of the biggest gems that I call them pops, Donald Washington instilled in me was that music and life do not separate. When they inform one another, it's a perpetual osmosis, at best.
That's so true. Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to ask you some things about you as a band leader as well. And, when you did then kind of Jurassic Classics, JC on the Set, all those early records, which I remember when they came out, it was like, and how did that happen for you and to become a band leader? I mean, what's the story behind you? Had also this awesome quartet behind you. I mean, how did your band leading story begin?
JC on the Set, Jurassic Classics, as a leader, Lester was the catalyst for that, because Lester got the New York Organ Ensemble together, and he got a working unit, went into the studios, and under the guys of DIW, and was the producer of these sessions, and we finished those sessions with them, the organizer and Funky T, Cool T, and to me off into assault sessions, and that's how the set came about, and eventually was picked up by Columbia to be distributed in the United States. And that started a little wise as far as discography was concerned, because I had a group before that happened. Before I got Craig Taborn into the mix, I was playing as a trio at the Mix Festival in 1990 with Tani, Tabbal, and Jaribu, Shahid.
Oh, okay.
And that was part of a Detroit jazz package that was on that particular year. Then in itself, there was Marcus Belgrave had a group. Brooks came with his the Abstract Truth or whatever. And King Cox also had a group as well, the Guerrilla Jam Band, my group. So it was a whole Detroit showcase of individuals.
Oh, wow.
And later on, that's when a couple of years later was when just made, the quartet complete.
Mm-hmm. Did you immediately feel comfortable in the role of a band leader? I mean, like, if you look back now on those early records.
Yeah, I think it was more of a fact that, we hit this music, we're representing the D and representing, cats and whatnot, and playing classics in a particular context, and also looking for other things as well. I just wish I held on to cats a little bit longer, to get other things happening, but such is life, and you gotta move on to other things and whatnot, and can't be crying, giving up all types of teardrops and stuff, because there are other blessings, and that's basically what this has been. Anybody can say it's been a perpetual blessing, to know these cats, and to not only know and hear them, while they're in their prime. And I talk about Larry Smith was on Conversing with the Elders.
Yeah.
What you hear on Conversing with the Elders, as far as Larry Smith is concerned, is like a fraction of what this guy was doing back in the 80s. I mean, here's a guy that was giving Sonny Stitt hell. You know,
Yeah.
anybody you got up on stage with him, I mean, forget about it. You know, and he was playing soulful, and he was a technician. And I mean, that's a powerful kind. Within the Parker Stitt tradition, that lineage, for me, he represented, if I was able to have heard Charlie Parker and Sonny Stitt, he embodied both of them and then some. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, that album is, he plays on Parker's Mood, right? No, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
Yes. And he was also, he played Sack of Dreams as well, too, on Baker.
Yeah. That's amazing that you got to do that with those guys. I mean, that's like, yeah, the dream for, I guess, any player. Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah. I mean, you know.
He turned out like 14, you know, just looking at your horn like, dang, it can do that. I got to get back into the shed, you know.
Yeah. But
so Larry's still with us.
really?
He's
Wow.
Yeah, he's coalescing. He's had, since those recordings went down, he's had a couple of strokes, and he's at his sister's, and he's kind of got like hospice care not going on, but he's still with us. He still eventually wants to play and get, you know, his fingers back on the axe and whatnot. And,
that's crazy.
You know,
yeah.
I go over as much as I can because he doesn't stay too far away from me in Michigan now. Yeah, downriver, but they got negligent down there, and that led to some stuff going on that shouldn't happen to anybody. So they got him out of there, and he's cool now.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, like James, I wanted to ask you, like, you know, speaking of these records, how do you decide? Because, you know, we started this talk with Lockjaw, and you always, on your musical path, you somehow seem to, well, I won't put reinvent yourself, but like you always find something that you investigate. Like, how do you decide to do or where to go? I mean, what led you on your path, or even now, like, you know, how do you decide what to do?
Lockjaw in particular was one of the cats I grew up hearing by way of Count Basie.
Yeah.
And it was on the pop album that he did back in the late 70s called Jam, in which Lockjaw participated along with Clark Terry, Al Gray, Carter, of course, Count at the piano, Louis Belson on clearly was another unknown fact about him was that he's with him picking up, he's playing professionally. And you can hear the virility, you know, that's in the instrument. You know, he's definitely a son, Ben Webster, and he cites not only Ben, but Bias and Chu Berry as well. I was there at his rehearsal, his practice room. He has pictures of Ben Webster and, you know, various, you know, cats up, just like a sensei would have his predecessors, teachers up and whatnot. He had pictures up, you know. And Jaws really didn't get that much play. You know, I mean, folks knew about him within the industry, but as far as him being a fan favorite, you know, like on Paul Hawkins and, you know, there's some historical aspects that needed to be dealt with. And the more I got into checking Jaws out as a soloist, I mean, first it was the Basie stuff, and then it went from there to the Mittens, you know, the sessions with Johnny Griffin, and then of course the Battle of Birdland with him and Sonny Stitt, and of course from there went to the stuff I was talking about earlier, you know, with the Dr. Jazz and you know, those earlier recordings, and finding out that he also played in Cootie Williams's big band.
Really? Oh wow.
You know, there are a couple of bands, big bands back in the 30s that spawned quite a few individuals. I mean, when you look at, like I was just listening to Chick Webb's band. Chick Webb, in addition to himself being a powerful drummer, people that he had in his group, of course, Ella Fitzgerald, of course, we know where that went as far as her being the first lady of song. Louis Jordan, who would go on to become one of the founding fathers of rock and roll. Mario Bauza, who's one of the chieftains of Afro-Cuban bop. Wayman Carver, who's another individual that was one of the first recorded jazz flautists.
Okay. Well, you know.
All these cats were in his group, all in this big band or whatever. So same with Teddy Hill, where he had Rodridge and Gillespie and Chuberry at one time. Cootie Williams also had, you know, cats as well. He had Probate. He had the first utterances of Bud Powell were under Cootie Williams's auspices. Eddie Cleanhead Vincent, you know, who would go on and play out blues, and of course Jaws was in the group as well. So I mean, these big bands that didn't get the Count Basie, Duke Ellington, you know, they were offshoot basically, but they had powerful individuals that would go on to create, you know, and deal with the parts of the music later on in the century and all. So the tentacles spread out real wide. Yeah. So just to bring notice to them, and also to get in the sandbox and to play with those tunes and those vibes and stuff. I mean, it begs, you know, it needs to be, as far as the attention is concerned, also be able to find certain things in there that I identify with. I identify with Jaws' virility. I don't seek to quote unquote copy him, you know, as much as anybody, you know, that's listening to any of our predecessors. We can't copy note for note. I mean, there's note for note and copies and all that. I wasn't born in the 20s and all. I didn't come through that, you know, per se. So those are informed different, all of that, but the spirit, as opposed to just taking solos note for note and just reading them as a description or whatever, there's a lot more spiritual and oral weight to transmit and to identify with, and in those particular recordings, and to take them somewhere else and to bring about other rhythmic, social, whatever commentaries as a result, and at the same time still make those unforgotten individuals that much more relevant. You always talk about Bird lives and such is here and this, that, and other. Well, that's the ultimate degree and how you're able to make them live, by being able to embody that spirit and take that spirit into other places that hadn't been touched or hadn't been revisited in this particular instance.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah, I agree. Also, with guitar, I transcribed, like last year, all solos of Oscar Moore. You know, who's for me one of the greatest but underrated cats out there. You know, it's like the stuff he plays. It's like, man, and no one talks about him. I mean, sure, some people do, but you know what I mean. It's like some of these guys are like, damn, so amazing. You know what they did. So yeah, it's good what you do, that you do. So yeah.
Oh. Dun.
Oh, sorry. Oh, shit. Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Come alive.
but cool.
Why this is happening?
Yeah, we got most
I know
of
why
it.
it's happening. I'm still dealing with, I hate to say dial up, but in lieu of a better word, they've been slow in my building on getting files here, fiber optics and whatnot.
Okay.
And it's starting to happen. So, in fact, I'm glad we're talking about this because I had an appointment that was scheduled, and I'll probably see if I keep that this week coming up. But I hate this to be the last, you know, situation, hopefully, where there's a steady stream, because it definitely changes. Back in my house in Michigan, we changed over to AT&T wireless.
Yeah.
And before, when I was dealing with the Xfinity, we actually had that. I had to get an adapter to connect to an Ethernet cable so that I could hold on to, you know, whatever signal that we did have.
Yeah.
But since I've been on AT&T wireless, this here, no problem streaming anything. So I got to find something similar or whatever, or wait for them to upgrade files thing throughout the building. And, you know, we can revisit this on a more consistent basis on both ends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so
that's cool.
Apologize for any shortcomings, whatever, but I hope that there's enough syntax and whatnot.
Yeah, I think we got
get things happening.
Yeah, I think we